Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Frozen Alignment podcast. Today, I am very honored to have such an amazing guest. Her name is Shehnaz Soni, and she is a mother, rocket scientist, theorist, adventurer, and author of the book The Quantum Being. She is a spiritual alchemist and a quantum counselor, and genuinely amazing, authentic, and a very present human being. Welcome, Shehnaz.
Thank you, Paul, for the wonderful introduction. And I'm so grateful that I met you right after I went on a retreat where I did the cold plunge. And then right when I came back and I saw your Facebook post, and I said, thanks God that in my town we have cool people like yourself. So that's how we met, basically. It's because of that retreat instigated that in me.
Yeah, no, it was really cool. Not no pun intended there to meet under those circumstances, and that's and the thing that I found out is, there's I think two parts to bringing things to you, right? And I do think that I was lucky and fortunate to have crossed paths with you. And I do think that there is meaning behind it. And I think that generally with that type of thing, people almost fall into this trap of it. I would call it like an attraction trap, right? Where they think that if their energy is their level is so high, right, they're going to attract everything. And I think that the trap part of it is that you have to put in the work too. You have to show up and you have to do the things. And then, you will obviously attract more of the energy that you're presenting to the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I actually say that, like, when Gandhi says, right, like about living life in harmony, right, having that dance where everything is in alignment. And I just kind of tweak it a little bit by saying that when all of your senses, right, and how you feel and how you think lines up, then that's when your vibration and frequency is so aligned that what you meant to merge with, you merge with it. You see my point? Because then there's no qualm about it. It's not like a halfway uh, thing. And that's how you can actually retain that frequency and vibration and keep enriching those experiences and keep going deeper into it.
Yeah. And so you have written this book, and it's an amazing book, and I've read it. It's The Quantum Being. I love the cover. I love the art. A self-sustaining and magnificent human craft, self-ignite to launch your magical life. So a couple of quick, vague questions I want to ask you. For people that haven't read the book yet, what is a synopsis of what it means to be a quantum being in layman's terms?
So the word quantum, I know people have heard it many times, and quantum pretty much means a discrete amount of anything. And in this context, when we combine that with being, basically, we call ourselves a human being. And I just took the human out and put the quantum there because I wanted to make a point that we are actually a quantum being because, we live in a quantum world. We are, and it's been proven by quantum physics that how at the subatomic level, how we vibrate creates the quantum dance for us, which means that every single aspect of our existence kind of depends on the nature of being quantum. And because of that marriage, I was dare enough to have a title like The Quantum Being to tell the world that we really are. And what I do in that book is explain that when we can hone into the power of knowing that how we actually are that moving molecules, it's going to take us away from this mindset that we're supposed to be in any kind of dense reality. You see, because most of the problem stems from the mindset that people think that everything should last forever. That is not the way we are meant to be. So when you really start understanding that we're actually meant to move, meant to evolve, meant to change, meant to experience different things, meant to go through like sinusoidal waveform or many different type of waveform, right, in our emotion, then we're no longer going to be surprised by this constant fight against what we truly are. You see?
No, that's a beautiful description of what it means to be a quantum being. And for, I am glad that you broke it down. So, on a subatomic level, so everything in the world, every matter is made up of atoms, right? And so, if you go down beneath the atom, what the atom is made up of, you get into the subatomic particles. And then you go even deeper than that, the furthest we've been able to see is these strange things are just constantly in motion. Um, and so being created by these things are just constantly vibrating, constantly in motion, and then having that realization that that is how our bodies are comprised, um, and then leaning into a further understanding that we are meant to move and we are meant to express and we are not meant to, let's say, sit on a desk for 8 hours a day or sit on the couch. And I love, and I think you've heard me say this many times, the expression that expression is the opposite of depression. You know, like if you're expressing yourself either through movement or through expressing emotions or any of those type of things, you are more likely to be happy than just sitting.
Right. And I would say that even if you are feeling depression, if you actually express the depression to a person that you can be vulnerable with, right away, you're actually moving your depression into a whole different frequency and vibration. And you're actually changing that state because as long as you don't stay there, then that's how you move through things, move through emotions.
Yeah, no, I like that. And it's true, that I think a lot of people don't know how to have open relationships, at least to that extent, where they feel free enough within themselves and confident enough within the relationship that they're in to express themselves openly in that way. I mean, I know many people in relationships where one side or both sides are not expressing their truths to each other.
Right. And I would say that the only reason we do that to ourselves is because we have something, basically, we have fear driving the relationship. Because, at the end of the day, you should always be ready to die or ready to be alone. And if you can handle those two things, because that's the ultimate outcome, right? That if you are in a relationship and you show all of your real faculties, then there's a very high possibility that the person will be like, holy shit, this is too much. Goodbye, have a great life, right? I mean, that would be the concern, right? And same goes with all these other things like diseases and whatever happens in our lives. People have fear of dying, right? So people are like, oh my God, let me just, if you have cancer and you have 6 months to live, you're going to do everything in your power to live. My whole thing is that when you actually embrace the fact, that's why the quantum being is in this along the same line. When you embrace all the possibilities that is going to happen in a way that you're no longer resisting it, that's when you actually start really living. You see, because you have to kind of almost accept that, okay, what is the worst case scenario? And once you accept that and you say, okay, you know what? It doesn't sound as worse as I thought. Maybe I should just take my chances. Because, I actually say that people who are meant to walk with you, they're going to walk with you one way or the other. The people who are not, then there's always going to be some sort of excuse for it to not work. Why not, especially for, to me, like I always say, for all the authentic intimate relationship that you have or the people you spend a lot of time with, you should always be more real to them because you're actually doing them a favor.
So that brings up a really good point where you started that by mentioning that you contemplate death. And I think that that's a very, very powerful practice. And I think that that translates very well into the next thing that you brought up, which was contemplating the worst case scenario rationally, like what is, the worst case scenario, and then playing that out in your head so that you can take away a lot of fear behind an action. Like if you take an action, you already figured out what is the worst part that could happen. You
Right.
take away that fear, and then you take that action in spite of the fear that would have held you back from it. And then what's really powerful too is that you brace yourself for the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario usually never happens, right?
Exactly. You're 100% right. But the good thing is, because you've already prepared yourself, it helps you.
And you're happier about the result, right? Because
Right.
the worst thing didn't happen. So awesome.
Right. And then you always know yourself, right? Because I've always known, and I'm sure we all have our patterns, right? That you start recognizing that whatever you assume about certain situation, it's never 100% correct. So you start understanding yourself that, okay, I'm always like, I've noticed about my parking, by the way, right? Whenever I park my car, and my car is white, right? So it's hard to find it. And I've noticed that I have this pattern that where I think my car needs to be, it's always further left of it, right? So now, since I know that, I actually already have added that error correction in my strategy because now I know. You see my point? So that's how it is with life, right? Because you're going to start noticing your own pattern because we are our worst enemies.
So speaking of recognizing patterns, and that's really important, analyzing your own life from a place of calmness is a very, very, very powerful practice. And I think probably the best way to do that is quote unquote journaling. And I think that for a lot of people, journaling has this weird stigma attached to it or this weird expectation that you have to write 5 pages or something crazy, right? But for me, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, journaling can be a sentence, you know, just write down something, but do it regularly so that you can identify and analyze those patterns that have happened during the day and then make the next day a little bit more informed and as a result a little bit better than the previous day was.
Right. So what I would say is that journaling is definitely a one way, right? Because what you're doing is you're projecting your consciousness through writing. Because when you're writing, you're using a different part of your brain, right?
Hmm.
And also like how you write, by the way, because I took a little, so I have a friend who basically has been studying handwriting for 30 years, right? And she basically, so right, so that's her, she's extremely good at it. And she explains that how we write also affects how we create because it's ultimately, it's almost like whatever we're writing, it's connected to our extension. It's an extension of our consciousness, what we put it on a piece of paper and what type of part of the brain we use. That's why, to me, writing versus typing is a different part of the brain being used. And our younger generation needs to make sure they experience both of that, right? Because you're missing out on that. So coming back to your whole journaling as one way to channel your energy, I agree that, if that works for you, you can either paint, you can either journal, you can either sing, you can either make a music. The point is, it doesn't have to be one way, but I think what it means is journaling is generally because majority of the people can write, so it's easy thing to suggest. But I think that to each to their own, everybody can come up with whatever they want. But at the end of the day, when you project your consciousness through different channel, you get to see a different side of you. Because see, you are like this hidden gem, and sometimes you are basically trying to comprehend your own self through these different venues.
So would you say one practice, not necessarily journaling specific, because that would be an aspect, right?
Yes.
Would be to just express yourself in a quiet, non-stress part of your day. So like before you go to bed, do something that enhances your own self-expression that comes from the heart, just so that you can put that energy out there.
Right, like I would say self-awareness, right? Because
Hmm.
I'll tell you this, Paul, and this goes way back. Okay, this goes way back in long, long time ago when I was in Karachi, Pakistan, and I was teaching physics over there at the center. And then somebody invited me to this seminar, and I went there, and I was blown away by the guy who did the seminar. And he gave a lot of nice exercise for us to do. And one of them he gave us, which I do whenever I can think of it, but I would actually put it out there because it's a great exercise for everybody to listen to. And what he suggested was at night when you're about to sleep, if you can go through every single thing that happened in your day, in a backward direction, right? So start from right before you tuck yourself in the bed, and you go backwards. That, oh, I did this, I read a book, I did this, I had this. event happened, whatever it is, you go all the way back to the morning since you wake up. And he said that it actually almost helps you enhance your memory power, helps you work with your brain in a different way. And it's almost like you're rewinding what happened the whole day. And just imagine just by doing that, you're already kind of going into a deepness of those experiences, because now you may learn from it in a different way next day and do something that aligns with you.
Yeah, and so I completely agree with that. So the reason that I like that is because I think that for 99% of the day, so let's say that's 1% of your day, you do a mental recount of what happened. Doesn't take that long. But then the rest of the day you can spend as present as possible, right?
Right.
Like not distracted, but totally engaged and immersed in the experience that you're having. And I think that that's one thing that due to phones, due to media, due to all these things that are distracting us from every moment, there's tons to take us away and have us ruminating about something. It really doesn't matter what, but leads us away from just being present, and appreciating the time that we're spending right now.
Right. And I think that it is basically art of living, right? Living in a present is an art of living. It's a lifestyle change. And I think the more you become aware of that aspect, because it makes your life so enriching and makes your experience so enriching, what happens is it completely becomes part of your life. Just like, like a cold plunge, right? You're going to do, and you're like, holy shit. But then you ultimately keep doing it. And then you say, oh my God, I feel so much better, right? Cold plunge is probably an extreme example of living in a present, but the whole idea is that it just gets built on top of each other. Because I can tell you right now that while I'm talking to you, Paul, like I'm very aware of where I'm sitting, like I'm very present. I'm aware. I'm choosing this experience because we both schedule this because we feel we find it exciting, and that is what happens when you start living in a present. You're more aware of your excitement. So what you do is you become very you have this discernment that I want to experience this. I'm not so much sure about that, you see, because then your entire system of making choices becomes in my mind, it becomes more aligned with you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I think that the ability to choose how you're experiencing life and how you're experiencing each moment is a very powerful way to live if you allow yourself to have that sense of calmness and sense of security about, each moment. And I think that a lot of the times people are too stressed and they don't have like a shut off switch. And so they're constantly living on edge or nervous or, just kind of amped up with stress of one sort or another. And for me, like when I do my breathing technique, that allows me to switch into a calm state for a period of time. And in that calm state, I could find my values and I can find the practices and stuff like that that lead me into a more purposeful life, because I always liken stress and the body's reaction to stress is like being in front of a lion. And it's kind of funny, but kind of true that when you're in front of a lion, you're dealing with a really stressful situation or just stressful life, your values don't matter. And I don't necessarily mean it to be blunt or anything like that, but it's true, like you need to get away from that threat. And so when I think we speak of alignment and we speak of values and stuff like that, I think one of the prerequisites is making sure that you have at least some time during the day to be calm, collected, and moving with intention.
Right. And it's sad, Paul, when you have to make that statement. You know why? Because I say that why not you live all the time in that, right? It's sad that you have to actually say, can you please take out time for yourself? Because you know
Hmm.
what? The irony is that that's where we have kind of gone a little too extreme on this route of living a life, kind of to some extent selling a perception of how it needs to look like.
Hmm.
Right? Because in that process, we have decided that, people who are extremely busy and have no time for you are successful. I mean, whatever that equation is, right? But I'm just trying to say is that, like, the good thing is that I've done all of that, right? Because I have been the person who was completely wanting to be 100% successful based on how it looks on the piece of paper or how it appears to be, right? So I've done that. So I really can understand that. But I actually realized that, it's like you come home when you really start looking at everything, that how it is. Because, in the very beginning, you said about my thinking of death, right? Like, because I'm very aware that we are going to die one day. We came here alone. We are going to die alone. And that keeps me actually more in present. And I think that's the recipe for people because, every single day. So as a Muslim girl growing up, we were very much taught that when you sleep, you pretty much are done and you're technically half dead. And when you wake up, you can say, thank you, God, for keeping me alive for one more day. Right? So that mindset really was embedded in me. And I always think that way because I always say that, have I done everything that my obituary can handle, Because like to me, like it's important. I mean, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things where like I think that I've done everything. I've said love you to everybody I care for. You know what I mean? All of that. So I'm just saying that when you live like that, that's when you actually start doing the things that you were meant to do all your life. Because see, we should not going from one appointment to another, one grade to another. We should be actually looking at ourselves and saying, you know what? Let me take my whole self with me, right? Not just my physical body, but my feeling, my thinking, my sensing, my feeling of enrichment. All of that needs to go with me, not just one aspect.
Yeah, and I think that holding on to that perspective and that gratitude for living a full life and having that joy, adventure, wanderlust, and all of those things for each moment, because it is truly a magical life using the K.
Right.
And I'm about to ask you about that. But when you can be gratitude, when you can have gratitude, when you can like realize I'm still alive, like I personally at my age, I know people that are younger than me that didn't make it, and so also that type of perspective where every day that passes you are one less day from dying young, you know and so it really is a gift. You have another day to spread love, you have another day to spread gratitude, you have another day to spread positivity, or any practice that has helped you be a better you can share that practice with someone else, and being able to offer that to other people, I think, is one of the best gifts.
Yeah, and I was actually thinking that our children can teach us how to live in the present, especially when they're young and not taken by by the facade. But like I remember my boys, right? They would be holding a pacifier, and then like let's say if something like really nice chocolate or something that they see that they find more exciting, they wouldn't even bother. Like the pacifier just gets thrown away, and they're already trying to grab something else in the mouth because they're like, this is way more exciting than pacifier. So I was like thinking that, can you believe how quickly they make that discernment? And there was no qualm about letting it completely go, even if it goes on the floor, because it's almost like they're not even attached that they're going to use it afterwards. You see my
Right.
point? That to me is incredible enrichment of living in a present and I think that's where, my God, I mean, I even struggle with that one, right? Like you have always like, it's like, okay, if I completely let go, will I be able to come back to it, right? Because if I can't, will I have a backup plan of a backup plan?
Well, then also, I mean, so it becomes, I think, a little bit borderline reckless in some ways, where if you are always grasping for that exciting thing right now,
That's
right?
true.
And so that discernment is really interesting because I'm honestly torn on whether or not recklessness really exists. Just because if you think about it, if you were to be completely carefree, right? And as a result of the carefree actions, it's kind of like burning a hand on a stove. You know, you don't know that the stove is going to burn you unless you put your hand there. And feeling is understanding, right? And so when you are living a bit recklessly or carelessly or carefree, right? Um, is it necessarily a bad thing to move confidently through that if at the end of it you're just learning a lesson, right? You're learning, hey, I shouldn't do that again, but I'm so full of enthusiasm and full of life that I still want to approach every second as a miracle, literally, and lean into a little bit more of like an impulsive nature. And so that's kind of something that I struggle with, just getting my mind around completely, right?
Right. So you
Because
want my, yeah, go ahead.
hesitancy sometimes I think could be a bad thing. I mean, there's a power to speed, you know, like asking a girl out really quickly gives you more time with that person. You know, putting money in savings immediately instead of a year later allows the money to accrue more quickly, you know.
Right, right. Right. So phrase your question because I can see that you're talking about your pattern and I have so much to share. I can't even but ask me a question. So ultimately you have already answered all of your questions, but ask me a question that you're struggling with right now based on everything you know about that impulsive behavior as you describe.
Okay. Um, Now I need to think about it. So, um, and I'm not sure that there's actually a question. So, for me, and this was like the conversation we had yesterday, right? About experimentation. And I'm a firm believer of running experiments and getting the outcomes of it. And I think having the courage to just take the action, take the shot, to commit to an action, even if it's flawed, even if it has tons of problems with it, just to get the result of the experiment so that the next time you take an action, you have experience behind you, giving you more confidence into, you know, like doing that thing again. You're more aware of what the risks are, what the pitfalls are, and all of those things. And so I think there is a question here. So, um, do you would you have any life lessons or examples that you personally have about when you were nervous about taking a shot or taking a leap when there's a lot of unknowns
Oh yeah.
and you only have your faith that the universe or God or whatever powers that be has your back and that you will ultimately end up in a better place at the end of it?
Yes, yes, many, many times. And I can tell you that it has been always hard, but when you've done it once, it's like you know that nobody's standing with you, but you believe in your core that you have to do this, and you actually do that, even though nobody around you agrees with you. Everybody thinks that you're completely out of your mind. So when I went through my first divorce, right, and I had two small babies, 2 and 4, and my oldest son was already tagged as a special kid because of his CP, and I'm living in a foreign country because I came there because of my arranged marriage, and I'm thinking that I cannot walk with my first husband any longer of 10 years marriage. So, and of course I'm trying to save the marriage, so I spent 2 years did whatever I thought can do, but it didn't pan out. So when I decided that I'm going to do that and nobody was agreeing with me, including my parents, I was really, really very much fearful about unknown. Not only that, Paul, my biggest fear was that I had never lived alone, right? Never lived alone
Mm-hmm.
in terms of without anybody else. So to me, to sleep alone in the dark was the biggest fear. So I had fear of my own. Then I'm responsible for two small babies, 2 and 4, where one is, has epilepsy. So I'm like, and then I'm living in this town that I'm not familiar with. So there were just so many unknowns. But the only thing was that I had given a chance to make that marriage work, for 10 years, right? So it wasn't like that, I'm just being fast and furious. So in my mind, I knew that if I stay in this life, I can extrapolate where it's going, right?
Hmm.
I also knew that where I'm standing, and if I go in the other direction, I have no idea how scary it's going to be because there are so many unknowns. God knows when I'm going to ever have a man in my life to even have somebody to sleep with because I'm too scared at night. You see, like I had all these things to worry about.
Yeah.
And it was interesting that how hard it was, but the pain of staying in that was just so devastating that even though I had no idea where this is going to be taking me, it was worth it for me to take that step. So the pain has to be so deep because that's what triggers us, right? To do things that are extreme. And this to me is an extreme example of doing something without really knowing where it's going to take you. It's like, wow. I mean, and like I have to say that like it was like instantaneously, like after I made the decision, even though I was very scared, the next day I noticed that my son, my
Oh,
oldest
it
son,
froze for a second.
what?
It froze for a second.
Oh, it did. Okay. So the interesting thing was that when you take the path and you, even though you feel you're alone, for me, like the next day when I got separated from my ex, the next day I noticed that my boys were playing in the grass because they were usually not allowed to ever go barefoot anywhere outside. So they were both like playing in the grass, and they're actually smiling. And I'm looking at it through the window and I'm thinking, wow, this boy, their life changed just in one day, just because they're doing something they would never do. You see my point? And
Yeah.
and I told myself that, you know what, it's going to be okay because, and that's how you keep building on it because you see examples around you and you see, you know what, whatever I've done, I've opened this entire new channel that wasn't existing before for me to
Is
access.
there, so pain is a huge motivator, right? Especially
Definitely,
as
definitely,
a catalyst for change,
definitely.
the straw that broke the camel's back, basically. So there's also the motivator of curiosity, right? If you're curious about something, you want to uncover it, you want to figure it out. This is basically the entire reason that dopamine exists in the body. It's, the motivator chemical in the body. It rewards us for uncovering things that we don't know. Which is why we doom scroll, right? Like, what will I see next? Oh, that's what I saw next. Yay, I'm gonna keep doing it. Um, and so I think that it's unfortunate that people go through such horrendous, painful ordeals in order to make a decision that ultimately improves their life. And um, is there any specific practice that you do to avoid getting to that pain threshold before you make a change?
Right. So that is the good thing, right? That the more you understand yourself through these extremely painful experiences, you can start seeing things that's going to go in similar direction. Like you can smell it miles away, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. And that to me is the gift that you give it to yourself. So like even before when you were talking about, you're very action oriented because you want to, you're result oriented, you're impulsive, you're action oriented. And sometimes you think that maybe it's a little too much. And I always say that, if something is in your beingness, it needs to be processed. It needs to be channeled. It needs to be. So if you don't do that, you're not serving yourself and you're not serving others. And that to me is living in authenticity with yourself, right? Whatever that quest is, you have to do it. But I always say do it with integrity. Do it with like if you have other people walking around you, your lovers, your children, make sure that they all don't get hurt in the process, right? Because that, or once you do that, then it's okay, because as long as you're doing it with integrity, you're not hurting them, then you have to have you, I mean, that's your birthright, right, to do that. Now, for me, like the interesting thing is that because of going through those extreme experiences, I think it actually made me realize that I've always underestimated myself. Always. Like I'll tell you, even like the whole thing about the darkness, right? And sleeping alone at night. And I'm living in this, like, good 3,000 square foot house with two small boys. And the weather in Houston is very unpredictable. So sometimes it like really heavy hurricane happens and like lightning. The noise of the lightning was so scary that even my boys were scared, right? And then I'm scared too, but I can't be because I'm like I have to be strong for these boys. But it was interesting that like I have to tell you that the very first night when I started sleeping by myself, and of course I'm aware that I'm scared, but I have to do this. And I had friends, they would say that, can you just come and sleep in our house, right? And I said, I can't do that. This is a lifetime decision I've made. It's not like that my husband is gone for a few days and I'm just like scared for a few nights, right? I'm like, this is
Right.
a lifetime. So I said, no, 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 you can't spoil me. This is my journey and I have to do it. And I remember one time, I started feeling like something was in the house, and it was actually a plastic bag that was, because of the wind, making a whole bunch of noise. And you have no idea how exaggerated because that's the thing. When we have a fear, we make things way bigger than they are. So I'm thinking that somebody's broken into the house. But I also
Hmm.
know, even though I have nothing to protect myself from, but I'm still being like, I'm like, you know what? I got to check this out because otherwise I can't sleep. And then I slowly took a step, and then I finally find this bag making noise. And I had to remove all the plastic bag away from anywhere because I'm like, this is killer. But it was all these step-by-step process I had to take, right? To be able to accept me with what I had created.
Which that's one of the marvels and one of the costs, I think, of going from a situation as humans where we were out in dangerous places. We slept on the ground. We didn't have these houses. We didn't have all these modern conveniences. And so whenever we do hear something that is different or unfamiliar, our body kicks into that, ancient, response mechanism where it's like, so two things happened, right? The one is you got, a cortisol spike, I'm sure, like you got the fear coming in. And then you also had dopamine because you had to figure out what was going on. What is that noise? And so you had to get to the end of it, and that motivated you to, like go find out what that thing was. And it turned out to be a plastic bag. Great, wonderful. And now you can sleep.
Exactly. And I also, right, I learned about me that how I'm exaggerating situation, partly because I'm scared. And then yeah, so it was kind of an interesting thing. So that's how you keep on giving yourself that confirmation, right? So that's why you have to be more real to yourself. That's why you have to live in a moment, be authentic, because the more you do that, the more you understand yourself, and then you can definitely see something. You don't have to go through so deep, painful experience next time around.
So, as far as underestimating yourself, you say you kind of chronically underestimate yourself. Is there a big challenge ahead of you that you might be shying away from because you're still underestimating yourself?
That's 100% true, because I definitely have that pattern. And I would love, for anyone or for even you to call out on me, because I think that's what we need friends for, is that somebody who believes in you more than even you can believe in yourself. Because, the reason we have, like, we all have challenges of our own. Mine has always been that I was definitely given a narrative that as a woman, I have a limited capacity to do anything. And that, even though I have really like done a lot from where I come from, but there's always a part of me that questions me as well, because I allowed so many people to question me that it has, because when we allow other people to question you, it's partly because you're questioning yourself. And
Hmm.
I have questioned myself all my life. And I think that to some extent, I'm always, that is my pattern, right? When you're on a crossroad, you're going to question. But then I also know that when my heart wants to do something, like all the other things I've done, I know that I'm going to do it and nobody can stop me, because nobody has been able to stop me, right? So I'm going to go through it. And then, ultimately I'll say, oh my God, I can't believe I waited this long. And that's okay, because, we all have our own lesson learned in this life.
Well, yeah, and that's really good point. One of the things that I do seldomly, honestly, is there's this practice is extremely powerful. That's why I don't really do it that often because, powerful practices, they trigger emotions, they trigger emotional responses. And, like as emotional beings and all of that, I don't think that we want to have extreme emotions all the time because it gets tiring and it's too much and like it's just a lot. But the practice I'm referring to, I think it's called a couple different things, but it's like the seven whys and or the seven layers or something like that. So at the root level, anytime you're trying to figure out what your motivation is, right? Whether it's pleasing other people, whether it's doing something because you'd be afraid that you'd be judged by other people, or if it's like, I'm doing this for my kids or I'm doing this for my business, that immediate answer is never really the root answer. Anytime that you are asked something and you're able to spit out an answer without really thinking about it, that's never the why. That is the actual real reason. And so I invite you to try this at some time. Like if you have, especially if you have someone that can run through this practice with you. So basically, they would ask you a question, like, well, why did you write the quantum being, as an example, right? And you might have an answer just ready at the top of your head. And then the way to do this exercise properly is you ask why based on that answer. So I wrote the quantum being because I wanted to help people understand that they are quantum beings. Okay, well, why do you want to help people understand that? Right?
Right,
And then
right,
your answer is different.
right.
You're answering, you know.
Yeah, and as an engineer, we do this why thing, right? Like even to troubleshoot, like and to get to the root cause corrective action. And it's
Yeah.
funny that you actually practice that because I practice that. I don't call it seven why. I just basically say like a why, like you go to as many why as you need to get to the root cause because it's ultimately the goal is to get to, and actually you don't even have to do that because like when I do with one-on-one client, it's always like start something very superficial. I want to lose weight, right? And then when you
Hmm.
get to the actual bottom of the point, then you learn something like that, oh, they are in a very, very challenging marriage and they want to save their marriage and their wife is questioning their figure, whatever the storyline is. But it's just when it, like, and even that is actually a middle, right? Because then you can go further down saying, why does it bother you? What is the worst thing that's going to happen, right?
Hmm.
And then they can embrace their fear. No, I actually love, I mean, these are the things that I actually believe that there are ways you can actually cut them down. Like, for example, I would ask you a question before we start anything is that what was your intention for doing that action? Because, our intention is actually what brings the result back. Because I say that let's say you go to the gym because you want to look hot. Well, you want to look hot is because that you can attract the mate. Let's say that's one reason. You
Hmm.
can say,
Right.
I want to be very strong so I can help raise my children the best because I want to be there for them, when they need my help, right? Now that's another reason. But and I don't say one is good or one is bad. I say, okay, it's good to know your intention because when you know your intention, then no, because you're the only one who knows it in your core, in your deep part of your soul, right? No, you don't have to justify it to anybody, just know. Because then also see how you get the result. Because that to me is where that is the quest we are all on, because we're all on a quest. And because I have a son who was on a quest to become, because he said that money is pretty much the only way one can have freedom in life. So he believed in that, and he actually got to the point where he has money now, and now he's actually saying, it's another quest. So that's exactly how it is, right? But sometimes you have to get there. Like even if you are on a quest that somebody may judge you, you should never judge yourself though, because there's a reason you are on that quest, and you need to go all the way there. And once you're there and you have proved yourself, then you're gonna be like, I thought that if I'm gonna have all the money in the world, I'll be the most happiest person. But I actually realized that it truly doesn't feel that way. So maybe what I was chasing for happiness truly wasn't the right answer. But see, that realization is the key for your growth and for evolution. And that's what I actually wanna bring to the surface, right? And humanity through the book, through everything. Because I feel like if everybody does that for themselves, we wouldn't be fighting in Palestine and Israel and doing all these extremely aggressive things to each other.
Yeah, and that's Very true. Um, and I think that it's amazing how good we are at fooling ourselves. I think that that is probably at the root of most problems in the entire world is that we're living in unauthentically with ourselves, with our values, with our real whys, like, and if we just run with the surface wise, right? I want to make a lot of money so I can have freedom. That would be a surface why, right?
Right.
And so when you get all of that money and you get all of that freedom and then you're still miserable, why are you miserable? And for me, I genuinely believe it's because you did not take the time to go through each successive layer until it got emotional, and that's where that's basically close enough to your real why that that will change everything. Maybe the real reason that you want a lot of money and a lot of freedom and stuff like that is really because you were comparing yourself to your estranged parents and you thought that that would bring you closer to them within yourself. That's probably closer to a real why than I want all this freedom. But then if you
Right. And the irony is that people who do that for the money, they think that they're going to have more freedom, but then because in order to make that money, they had to compromise their freedom. And what
Mhm.
happens by the time they make that money and they look at their life and they say, wow, I did it to get freedom, but look at how much trap I am to maintain this lifestyle now. So everything has a price, right? And to me, like, yeah, so you're absolutely right. If people can do that deep question answering, right? Like you're saying that to the extent where they can activate their emotion, right? So then at least that means that they're going somewhere into their authentic self.
Yeah, and I realized for me, I've done this with teaching the Wim Hof method. Like, what is my real reason for doing that? And of course, the surface answer was so that I could help people live better lives and be stronger and do all these things and realize their own inner fire and inner strength. And then, I got down to the reason that is emotional for me and the real why. And this is the why that I'm going to Poland in like 2 weeks and I'm going to be climbing up a mountain in shorts in the winter of Poland. It's going to be really extreme, really difficult. But my why that got me emotional and I was like, "Oh, that's probably the one," is that I want to leave a legacy for my daughters that they could be proud of.
Hmm. So, okay, so that's your why, right? That's your
Yeah.
deeper why, like it triggered your emotion. And then I'm going to ask you that why do you want them to be proud of you?
Um See, this is why you have another person. See, I did the whole thing by myself. I didn't even ask that question.
See, I can help you go further down the hole, rabbit hole, because that is my expertise, by the way. So I think we can actually. So let's trade sometimes because when we have problems, we can actually do that to each other, and it always helps to be on the other side because when you're because if I'm yeah, that question came to me right away. Is that why do you care that they're proud of you? Like, don't you think that they already are, or do you think that that's missing? You see, it's because that's logical question, and then you're like, I guess I didn't think that way. Sometimes people say that because they're like, oh, no, I know they
Yeah,
already.
because I mean, like, listening to you talk, like I came up with an answer to that, but then also another why, because it
That's what
just
I'm saying.
keeps,
The why goes way deeper than seven layer. And that's the
yeah.
funny thing. But the thing is, and you can go as deep as you want or give yourself a permission. But I love your idea that whenever it activates emotion or triggers emotion, then that's a good gauge for you that you're being authentic because sometimes people who have not lived in authenticity, they need reminder of when they truly are. It's that's the reality we live in, right? So it's good that that can be a very good way to kind of say, yeah, you know what? It kind of touched my heart. So no, I
Well,
actually love that. So I think that that's a that's a good thing to keep in mind. Yeah.
I think that like we're all humans are emotional beings. And I
Yes.
think that every decision that we make is made out of some sort of emotional state. And if we're calm, collected, or happy, joyous, we're going to make a whole lot different choices based on those emotions and those feelings than we would if we were sad or angry and that type of thing. And there's like some debate whether or not we make rational choices and then have emotional responses, or make emotional choices and then rationalize why we made those, kind of like getting away from the emotion, right?
Right, right. So let me tell you my perspective. I think that we are using pretty much. I mean, we should be using all our faculty all the time. Like we are aware of our senses, feeling, thinking, everything. The reason we have to do this chicken or egg type of questions all the time is because we don't see the world as multi-layer it is, based on the membrane theory, right, or based on string theory, or based on different way of multidimensional way of looking at it. Everything is layered at the same. There everything is happening all at the same time. The only thing is we process information linearly, which is the reason we have to even ask the question, right? Which is the reason we say, oh, did we think before we felt, or did we feel? Or and to me, like, it's all happening all at the same time. It's just what you want to tune into at a time. And you get to decide that. You see, you decide whether you need to go in your thinking or you need to go your emotion.
Yeah, and that agency and that freedom to focus on whatever you choose to focus on is I think the majority of the power that we have over the outcomes in life.
100%. And that is why I always say that, like, if we can understand ourselves, like, know thyself, right? I mean, that's pretty much the key for any kind of ancient wisdom. And that's truly the gist of it. It's all about knowing yourself. So you're actually, even though you think that you're going to Poland to make your daughter proud, you're actually doing it for you ultimately, because you want them to be proud of you. You see, so it comes back to you. And why does that matter to you, right? Because I'm sure it matters to you way more than matters to anybody. So that's where the treasure lies, right? When we go into that rabbit hole, right? And you're like, wow. And I think that we're going to trade, because I'm going to go in that rabbit hole with you some other time, and you're going to help me understand that where am I in my life that I'm underestimating myself, because I would love for someone else to kick my ass sometimes, because I've done that all the time. But I think that it's good to do that. And I would do that for you or for anyone that, because to me, like, if you can't handle the truth, then you can find somebody else, because
Hmm.
that's not going to be me.
No, and that's probably one of the reasons that we had this like instant connection with each other, is that we're both very pragmatic, and we're also both, and correct me if I'm wrong, like passionate about the truth at all costs,
Yes, that's
you
true.
know, like I would rather hear the most horrific, horrible, scarring truth than someone lie about that.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, it's just basically when you're lying to other people, you're actually lying to yourself, right? So
Hmm.
that just doesn't work to me. That's why I'm saying that, just, I mean, they always say, right, that just it's better that um you are basically in your own. There's a very beautiful way to say it, Paul. Maybe how they say that, how, like when you do what you do for yourself, even if you have nobody standing with you, that's way better than you doing things for others while you're not even standing with yourself.
Right. Yeah. Um, and that's where all of the deep work gets done anyway. When you're alone, when you have no one to show up for, you have no one that you're trying to prove anything to. When you're, by yourself for a day or the weekend, what activities are you doing? And that is more indicative of your character than any social interaction you could have with someone else.
100%. 100%. 100%. So yeah,
So,
that's
um,
yeah.
I'm gonna get to question number two.
It just took 1 hour for us to address first question. Oh my God.
Right. No, it was a good one though.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it was.
So for you, and I know this runs deep for you, what is magic with a K? And how does that relate to us being quantum beings?
So it's interesting because magic precedes science, and that's it, right? So when I went to the mystery school, they would actually emphasize on the fact that the word magic basically has that essence with it, which is why they were spelling it with a little different spelling. And I like that because every word and every thing has a connotation attached to it, right? An energy string attached to it, or a lot of information attached to it. So this word is kind of saying that it's not the magic word that you've been hearing it, because people believe of magic as somebody who's good in selling the perception, like David Copperfield, for example, right? Like, but we're talking about the magic that we already have built in within us. And the only reason we even have to use the word magic is because you haven't allowed that magic to be part of your life. Because technically, what we call magic is actually our birthright. Because if you think about it, that if you see somebody like me, for example, a girl who doesn't speak English, who lives in a culture where everybody says don't go to school, and then you see that girl in a NASA, working on taking us to Moon and Mars, you know, if you really look at the two story and somebody says this girl will do that, you'll be like, no, 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 I don't know how she can go from here to here. It just makes no sense. It sounds like magic. So my whole thing is that if that girl would not have dreamt big enough to get there, she would have never made it there. So the magic is a perspective, and dream is a perspective, but the people who make it happen are the one who don't give up on themselves. And that is pretty much the ultimate recipe for living a magical life, is that you can't give up on yourself, because everybody else will at one point in your life, right? And they will actually make you question you. And when you actually compromise at that point, that's when you did not give yourself the essence that you truly are. So you are the one who's denying yourself, whatever it is. Nobody else can deny anything to you. It's you who are doing it to yourself. And the reason you do that, that's a good rabbit hole to go to, because there's always a reason.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of those reasons, at least with my own experience, have generally always been like the self-sabotaging reasons have always been traced to some trauma of one form or another. And it's kind of my theory of the unconscious brain and how it works is the unconscious brain is kind of dumb in some ways, and that it doesn't immediately recognize better paths. It goes to what's worked in the past for a long period of time, and it will use that programming when a similar situation appears, right? So if it was more comfortable for you, let's say in a controlling relationship, to acquiesce and be quiet, and that led to a more comfortable state of living instead of arguments and fighting and stuff like that, or breaking away from that toxic relationship, then all of those years of being quiet and subdued is going to come up again later. And even when the frame that your life was based around, being in that toxic relationship isn't there, that leftover conditioning still is, right?
Right. But now the interesting thing is that what you just said, my God, it was like, I agree about, so the way I think of subconscious is that it's continuously projecting experiences that you haven't processed yet. Like
Yeah.
you haven't, right? So if you really think about it that way, it's not actually dumb. It's actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do. But you are dumb enough to see that, right? Which is why you have to keep living on that loop. Like you are
Mhm.
basically, somebody has played the video recording in the camera, and you're seeing that recording and you're living on a loop. You have a choice to exit, but you get to decide that. And until you don't become 100% ready, it keeps coming in different people, different experiences, different form. But if you see that, you know what, I feel like I'm going through the same lesson, even though it's with different people, it's in a different state, maybe it's in a different, you know what I mean? Like there are variables, but the underlying pattern is the same. That's why pattern becomes important. When you start detecting pattern, which is one of my thing, right? That I actually like to teach people how to detect the pattern, because once you become good at detecting the pattern, the good thing is that you see yourself. Because I did that with my first marriage, right? Like I had a very, kind of a patriarchal marriage. And then I did not take much break. And then I ended up having second marriage because I was working with him, my second husband. And he came along in my life without any gap. I had not done any kind of self-awareness work, right? I had not done any kind of understanding work. So when he came along, even though he looked very different because he's white, he's not even brown, right? He speaks different language. He's just so different. And there were just so much differences in his personality and everything that there's no way I would say that I'm going back in the same pattern again, because it didn't look like it at all. But it took me a while to recognize that now I have upped my game, right? Because I'm becoming really good at myself. So of course my game is coming with challenges. It's like it has a whole upgrade level. All the characters are upgraded, but the way it's like the way it's hidden is that you can't you can't see that it's actually the same pattern, just looking, making it appear to be like covered under this thing where it makes you feel like you have evolved,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this whole Hunger Game. When you start getting good at it, that's what I like everybody to start learning, because I think we need to start focusing on understanding our own patterns because it's connected with everything that happens in our lives.
Well, I think that a large part of it is our evolving relationship with affirmation bias. So, affirmation bias is when you agree with something, whether any type of view, it could be political, religious, personal, emotional, spiritual, any view that you resonate with and you believe in. You know, like I have evolved, I have changed, I no longer go along with these patterns, right? And so you're going to look for all of the evidence that supports that view because that's your view, and you're going to disregard all of the evidence to the contrary. And that's what affirmation bias is. And I
Okay.
think that regardless of how much we change, we're still in this constant fight against affirmation bias. You know, we can level up, we can move past our own trauma, we can improve ourselves to the point where we wouldn't recognize the old us. You know, maybe there was some addiction in the past. Like I've had a cigarette addiction before. Maybe it was getting into unhealthy relationships. And I've moved past all of that. However, I still struggle with just the general concept of affirmation bias. And the one thing that I use, the one tool, is a very simple question that I try to ask very often, actually. And that is, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong about this? What does that look like? And then what are some pieces of evidence that could show me a broader or more correct picture of this thing that I'm so certain about? And I think that that's a very healthy practice, even though it's challenging because it's more work. You know, it's kind of lazier to go along with the stream of affirmation bias, you know, like, oh, I must be right because everything is saying I'm right. I can't be wrong until, you know, like that stark realization happens sometimes where everything that you believed in just shatters, right?
Right, because I actually felt like I went through that last week, really. But the interesting thing is that so there it seems like there are many ways to go to the mountain. You're saying that you do this questioning to yourself by asking that what if I'm wrong, right? Which is your way of doing it. And what I'm saying is whether you do that or not, it's always going to meet you to make you question that in one way or the other. You see, because it's part of your thing that you're not processing. You're the one's going to be aware of it. And sometimes you can let the volcano erupt, and sometimes you can prepare for the prevention, right?
Hmm.
That's your choice. And then again, it goes back to the question you initiated this whole thing with, is that, do I take an action or do I hold back because I'm too impulsive for myself? And as I said, that's exactly what I call quantum dance, right? When to hold, when to fold, that gambler song. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
right? So it's almost like you have to make sure that that's why it all comes down to you, that you got to understand yourself, that why you do whatever you do. Because when you start understanding that, then all your binary decision, because whenever you're saying yes, you're saying no to something else, right? So that is why it becomes important that what type of dance are you doing? I actually use this analogy is that everybody's watching their own movie, right? Which is basically everybody's living their life with their experience in the form of experiment in their own movie. And ultimately, you when you walk with somebody else, like your children, your lover, you say, you know what, I am watching this movie. Do you want to watch with me? Please come sit next to me. And all the people who sit next to you become your family, you see, or your friends, or whatever, if they come once in a while, or people who live with you all the time. But that's what everybody's doing. And at the end of the day, you should not be watching a movie that you don't want to watch only just because you're worried that all these people you have with you are going to disappear. That should not be the reason. That's my ultimate message.
So, along with that movie analogy, right? Which I love it. It's
Yeah,
brilliant. It goes into a lot of different psychological things too. Like there's this spotlight effect that people have where they think that people notice them a lot more than they actually do, and pay more attention to them just because they are in their own lives the star of their own movie, right?
right, right.
And so, as the star of their own movie, of course, everyone's got to be paying attention to them. But that's not really the truth because they're in their own movies and they're their own stars.
That's true.
Um, and so, that's a really good analogy. And I think that having a playfulness with that, and there's a bit of like guidance that, like, when you're having trouble at deciding something. And I think Alex Hermosi said this one. It was asking yourself what would make a more epic story. So if you're deciding on going on a retreat or going and buying a new house or whatever big thing that you're trying to decide on, let's say the pros and cons are pretty washed out, like you're not seeing a huge benefit or a huge detraction, and you have just a couple choices or whatever it is, what would make a more epic story? And I think that that's kind of going along with what you're saying about, making your movie a good one, something that people would want to watch. Like this
Right,
is
right.
an adventure.
Or yeah, or not be attached to that, because if you're going to be focusing on the movie, then it's okay if you have to watch it alone. At least it's something that you want to watch. You see,
Hmm.
ultimately, that's the key thing, because ultimately you're going to attract people who are going to say, you know what? Oh my God, I like what you're watching. Can I sit next to you? And you'll be like, sure. You see, so ultimately you're not going to be alone, but yeah, you may be alone in transition. But you should be willing to take those risks and chances, because how else are you going to get to know yourself? Because you should definitely not be watching the movie that you don't like to watch. That much I can tell, no matter where you
Man,
are.
that could be its own, literally, I'm not even kidding, that could be its own book.
Maybe,
Like
yeah, like
be the main character in your movie that you want to watch.
that's true. Yeah. I mean,
Oh,
that's
that's
pretty.
that's amazing. Because I mean, honestly, like with every decision, it really doesn't matter if your wife likes the movie that you like to watch. It doesn't matter if your kids like it, and that's one of the things that I know some people would disagree with, like, oh, I do everything for my kids. You don't.
Because
You
then,
do it
the
for
biggest,
you.
right. That is very true. Not only that, a lot of time when people do that, then they also live through them. Like even when those kids become adult, then they say that I just want my kids to be happy. I just want my kids to be that. And then I actually say that, my God, that's quite an expectation you've placed on them. Because if you
Hmm.
think about it, and also your perception of happiness is very different than theirs. So now you're already imposing that on top of it. And based on quantum physics, helicopter mom does not work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's, it's probably a longer conversation, but my personal view on happiness is that it's not something that people should seek.
Right.
Um, because along the same lines, logically, as you wouldn't seek sadness, both of those are emotional states, not destinations that you live in. The
That's true.
destination that you live in is this very moment. And how your relationship is to being present and being here, like living in gratitude, I could see that more as a long-term goal than seeking or striving for happiness, because ultimately shit happens. You know, we're all human and we all go through rough times, rough patches. We go through depression, we go through loss. And having this expectation that, oh, I found happiness, I should never be sad again, is delusional.
Exactly, because coming back to the whole quantum being, right? We are continuously, going through lots and lots of changes, right? In the way we think, the way we feel. So yeah, and it's funny you said that, right? Like the happiness and sadness, they are part of your emotional state. And it's kind of like I say, journey is intertwined with the destiny, right? So like people think that happiness is a destiny, but happiness is a state of mind, right? So that state of mind is something that you cannot decide on it, that how are you going to create that, because it happens in a very kind of a synchronistic way, kind of more like that, that quantum collapse occurs in a way that it's like all of these things come together, like superimposed on top of each other, like that dance is not something you can calculate, because it's beyond your comprehension. That's why when you fall in love, right? All of that is beyond your comprehension. Like you are not going to plan that, you know what, I would like to fall in love with this person with this credential. Because, I mean, if you can do that, that doesn't work like that. You fall in love and you're like, oh my God, I'm in love. I don't know how it happened. That is how happiness and sadness and all of these emotions are. They're not going to be dictated by you. So
Or
that's why it
planned,
becomes
yeah.
important to notice them, right? While they're happening. Like what is making me happy? Oh, wow. That's how you're getting to know about your own self.
Well, there's a really short quote: "The heart wants what the heart wants."
Yeah, you're right. And see, now it's a very simple language.
Right? A lot of the truths are just really, really simple short phrases, and that's kind of, and they withstand the test of time. Like it's always going to be true. The heart wants what the heart wants is always going to be, like this axiomatic truth. Um, so going into, see, I actually I prepared some. I have notes.
So I know
So
yeah.
with your personal practice, do you have, and everyone loves these things, and I have my own opinion, but do you have a morning routine or an evening routine? Um, and if you could describe those, if you do have them, or additionally, if you have like a tip or a practice that's like a really short, concise thing that you can explain, that someone could take away and incorporate, that would have a big change on their life if they were to do it consistently, what would that be?
Yeah, I call it light body activation. I even have a course out on my website where people can buy it if they want now, because I made it available. And the reason I call it light body activation, because, we are actually, we have, like photonic light is part of our DNA. It was proven by Japanese in 2009, right? The reason I say light body activation is because, like, when you watch the movie Finding Nemo, and how, if you remember the scene, right, where the fishes are all trapped, and then they're all saying that, oh my God, we need help. And then the Nemo says, Daddy, how do we help them? And then, he says that swim down, swim down. So to me, I call light body activation exactly that. And the reason is that when all the fishes swim down together, they were able to do something that they were not able to do by themselves. But they had a leader who said, swim down. And what I'm saying is, light body activation is my way of saying swim down. And you can do that with me, because what I do is with the whole, I take you in a space where you actually become aligned, right, with the earth grid, with the, with the central sun and the earth. And you basically feel that resonance frequency where you kind of are one with everything, which is the 0 point energy, right? In a physical, in our scientific language, it's all the same, right? Like feeling the gamma synchrony, feeling that being one, being in the flow, very much similar to what you actually do through your breathing, right? It's kind of all the same. It's just ultimately to get to that place. And I have a little different way of taking people to that place than you do. But we're all wanting to get to the same place, because we all want to feel one. harmonious and peaceful. And the good thing about this technique is that I actually help you understand the science behind it. I help you understand why it truly works, where it changes and helps change your cell voltage, because I have actually done that to myself through healing myself through extreme diseases that I could have easily collected a disability check for. Truly, right? So the point of the story is, so that's one of the practice that I think that everybody should do. And then you can add the affirmation. Like I have my, because I have studied Kabbalah, right? So I really love the trestle board affirmation because they just are so beautiful and so powerful. So, I do that. So you can actually create your own adds on to whatever dance you want to do. And if you really honor that, just like you honor your exercise routine and other things, then what happens is it becomes part of you, reminding yourself that you are that spiritual being. And then what I do is that in the middle of the day I do it, and in the evening I do it. In the evening I do it with the stars, and it's so much fun
Oh,
sometimes when you
nice.
look up in this sky and see that, and you can see that it's a different type of light. It's not the light that was in the daytime, but it's a different light. And as soon as you decide to dance with them, you're going to start observing that your reality will have that flow about it. So being in the flow is something that you can emphasize, not just for 1 hour a day, but as long as you're conscious and aware, why not do that, right? And then in my website, I share everything that I even take personally to keep up myself with all the things that happen, with the 2020, and just to kind of make sure that you stay healthy throughout. So because to me that is all important.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what it would look like doing the breathing and also having some light body activation, sound bath combination, because that would be phenomenal. Um, a couple of quotes that I pulled out of the book just because I love them and they're very deep. And if you want to add on to them, you can, but I just want to read them real quick. Is that we are souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments to which our souls play their music. We can see the soul of a person through their eye because light shines through their eyes. Albert Einstein.
Yeah, I
I
know.
had
I
no
love.
idea he wrote that quote.
And I hope that he did, because I'm wondering too now. But yeah, because I think I may have, yeah, I love that, right? Which is why I put that in the book, because I always say that when you start meeting people at the soul level, then the entire quest about how to live in a present will not be the quest. It will be easy to do, because then you're going to be really that connected, that because you are not just connected physically, because you have all your other faculty there, they have their own faculty there. All of that dance is happening almost like you're seeing only the tip of the iceberg, but there is all this hidden thing happening behind you, the convergence, right, which I call it, because that is why it's so powerful when you actually meet with people, right, real time. Because when you meet people real time, you are converging at the much more multidimensional level than you can do through the Zoom, right? Because we don't have, we are communicating through the pixels.
Yeah, and that makes sense from just an energetic point of view, right? So let's say we're all like power generators, which we are. I mean, we have mitochondria going through our bodies, creating tons of power that fuel basically everything. We're energetic beings, we're electric beings, we're beings of light. And so each of us is kind of like, yeah, its own power source. So if you connect two people on the same frequency, or at least close enough that it's compatible, then you can create a lot more energy together.
Exactly. That is why it becomes so much more exciting when you have other people agreeing with you where you're going, right? That's why it's so much more fun to watch a movie with other people who also want to watch that, because it almost makes you feel like, oh wow, like it's that validation. Because even though you should not live with validation, but we were created with that social aspect of our existence. So we want to be with people who makes us feel like wanted, loved, all of those things. So that's the reason we do that. But it's just in the quest, when we start doing it to the extent where we have lost ourselves, we have no idea why we're doing it. That's when we are no longer in the flow like the way we need to be.
Yeah, and we get disconnected from it, and it's a strange thing when you do get into that flow and you get into that creative space and you get into that joy and gratitude, and just like there's a certain electricity to when you feel alive, that is unexplainable. And there are these moments that we can have in the strangest places. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever experienced that moment of pure joy and gratitude, and they don't last very long, but like seeing a beautiful sunset sometimes can trigger it, or being out in nature and seeing a very expansive field and being like, oh my gosh, I am so lucky to be able to see this, to witness it, and be in my body. And it's powerful.
Right, right. And I think that we have to change that paradigm that like we don't stay in that time, because then it depends on you actually. Because first of all, it depends on what makes you create that for you, because you can create that for you because through your imagination, that's how powerful you are technically, right? I mean, it helps to be there, but you know what I mean? Like, there is that. But but the point is that if you do it through something that's more available in your life, like let's say nature, right? Like if you know that I can just go out in my backyard and I can just feel that, then now you have made it more accessible to you. So to me, make it accessible to you so you don't feel like it's some sort of dessert you can only have once in a while. Why not make it accessible every day? When you feel like you want to tap into it, you give yourself a permission to do that, right? Because that is how you are going to actually get to know yourself. That, oh,
Yeah.
wow, this is what I really like.
Well, I think that both of us do that again in slightly different ways, where you have the light body activation that you do personally on a daily basis to keep that connection, of wonder and joy and gratitude, where every day is an opportunity. And um, sure, sadness, sorrow, depression, fear, anxiety, all those things will still come in. But then recognizing that any emotional state, and I heard this a while ago, I don't know the source, but any emotional state is a tunnel, it's not a cave. And so you always get out of sadness, you always get out of depression, you always get out to the other end of it. And then at the other end of it, we have this really weird thing where when we look back, it doesn't seem that bad. At least for me, like when I'm in a really dark space, it feels like the worst thing in the world. When I'm out of it, I'm like, oh, it wasn't that bad.
Right. And now you're no longer the same person, actually. That's probably why you're saying that. Because
Yeah.
that's what it transformed you, right? Yeah, it's funny, you said emotion is like, I actually call emotion as energy in motion, because I
Hmm.
take the E and I say, because technically it transformed from wherever it was to the point where it's completely now in your business. It's on your face now, right? It's like no going around, no turning around. And that to me is that you got to process it, because you know what? It's right on your face. You might as well process it. But processing it gracefully is what I actually focus on, because life is going to keep throwing balls at you. And the more graceful you become in this dance, it's going to show up. It's going to show up on your face. It's going to show up how people are going to receive you. And it's going to show up in your life in the form of people.
Would you say that experiencing that emotion, I'm trying to think of the right word, like fully, authentically, not pushing it away, not fighting it, like leaning into the emotion. So, let's say you start feeling sadness, recognizing that you are feeling sad, completely accepting it, surrendering to that feeling, as a way to more quickly go to the other side and more quickly, get through. I think that certain emotions are almost required, as part of this human experience. There's no way that people can avoid pain. There's no way people can avoid negative emotions. But I think for me, my theory is that if we fully accept and surrender ourselves to the emotions, we can get back to that emotional homeostasis where things are balanced out afterwards, more quickly.
Right. And it's interesting. I noticed that in everything you use like quickly or certain like time attributes, right? Because you think in respect to time. I actually don't, because in the quantum world, time truly does not exist. So my thinking is different. But one thing I would say is that going deeper into your emotion, the reason it's so important is because you don't want to repeat that. You see, because if you're not going to address it all the way, like you said, all the whys and all the, you know, if you're not going to address it to the deeper level, was the biggest challenge is you're going to bring that same thing back again because you haven't done the work. You haven't really done it. So yeah, you can say that by actually giving it what it needs so that you can merge with it, understand it, and transform it is actually the art of living, because that's what that's the sign of evolution. That's the sign of like you're integrating, just like any disease. To me, disease comes to upgrade our body. That's what I always say, because if you are still alive after whatever you've gone through, means you were upgraded, right? Because you said disease, no, you're not going to survive, I'll survive, right? So
Hmm.
you had to conquer the disease. That to me is what we're doing at all times, right? So similarly, in the case of emotion, of course, it's not some sort of quest to kind of fight it, because it's emotion, it's a different type of energy. That's why you have to actually meet it and kind of work with your inner child, because usually that's the inner child journey that you should take on. And basically what I've done is, because of learning and understanding how all these things works, I have devised all this meditation for different type of things. So when I work with client one-on-one, I always do the meditation that completely works with their situation. And I have noticed that every single time when you go into that imagination of solving a problem through meditation and through that different perspective, it's almost like you come back as like some part of you has already been like worked now. Like you're not just looking into the problem, you're actually solving it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, well, and that's also so going into, like the whole disease aspect of it, and um like experiencing the emotions. I think that one of the biggest advantages is that if you experience an emotion and you allow it to express fully and you process it, then you are not storing it. And I think that when we start accumulating stored emotions that we haven't fully processed or worked through, and this goes the same with trauma, right? If you haven't processed, the emotional elements of a trauma or the emotional impact it has on you, you're storing it somewhere in the body. And I think that that energy dysregulation is part of what causes a lot of diseases and a lot of dysfunction within us.
Yeah, that's why it's dis-ease, right?
Right.
It's basically saying it's negating the ease part of it. And we
It's
are saying, let's
uncomfortable.
just stay in the ease. Like, let's be in the flow. Let's follow yourself. Let's do that dance. I mean, let's just be in that state of being. And that's why
Yeah.
now, see, when I say quantum being, with everything that we've talked about, you can see why I had to choose those words, because it kind of encompasses the word within it.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. Um, so another quote, we transcend dimensions beyond space time by imagination.
Yes. Because when you imagine, first of all, think about it. When you're imagining it, it truly is not, you're not looking at your physical reality where you're sitting. You're not looking at the clock, what time it is. You are actually, so you have transcended your space and time. And then you are completely focusing on something that truly doesn't exist in your physical dimension, but you actually believe enough that you're giving it a projection to project it in your imagination, right? In that slideshow that you've created through your mind. And just by virtue of doing that, you are actually adding something in your manifestation, because what you're doing is, that's why imagination gives birth to life, is because you are saying that I want to experience you, even though I don't see you here in my real life, even though I don't feel it, I can't touch it, but I still believe in it. And in a way, if you think about it, it's kind of connected to the faith, right? It's connected to the like that belief, that inner knowing that you have, that no matter what everybody says, you're completely out of your mind. You're like, no, no, no. You have to, right? So you are basically standing up for yourself. And to me, whenever you do that for any imagination dream, that you believe in yourself, ultimately it becomes your reality. And I can tell you that I've done that many times. And that's the message there.
That's it's really, I think that that's just very, very, very profound. And I think that that's something that would help if like anyone has like a meditation practice at all, to meditate on that concept, the um, have a large imagination. Imagine, like what you would consider impossible right now, like you were saying with your childhood and all the difficulties that you had, and also being in this marriage in this foreign country and having all of these difficulties, transitioning that into where you are now, like the dream and the projection that that young woman must have had to imagine becoming who you are now has got to have been what a lot of people would say are impossible dreams, right? Because logically, according to, like a standard path, right? Like that's not what a lot of people would say is a normal standard path. You know what I mean? It's like the circumstances aren't right. You're not, um, you know, just in the what someone would call like a normal trajectory for
Right, yeah, and it was
that
like
type of
beyond,
life.
it was like a beyond obstacle course that they probably have it in the military, because I think about all the people that I created in my life to say no, no, no. Like so many people everywhere I went, I had to be like really, really, like everybody said no. And I'm a people pleaser at the same time. So it was very huge conflict of interest, right? Because on one hand, I really wanted to please people so they can love me. But on the other hand, I was feeling like shit inside. So that's why that's the dance right there. See, that's the dance that, to some extent, we all are people pleaser because we are living among other human beings. That's
Yeah.
just a fact. But then how do you do that? That balance is something that it's a constant work in progress, right? For me. But I can assure you that I have learned how to create a balance in my life more now than I ever have been able to, which is why I want to share this wisdom, because I would love everybody to create that for themselves. And I believe that if we all do that, more of it, we're going to actually have more of our dreams come true, living with other human being in harmony.
Well, and that's I think that the focus between um your movie, right? We're talking about that. Like you're the main character in your movie. How do you want your movie to play out? How do you want it to be? What would be most enjoyable for you to watch? And I think that if you put more value into that, which is a very powerful reference, right?
Mhm.
Because it goes away from what other people think, because it doesn't matter. Your likes, what you would want to see in a movie is different. And it's interesting because that's like a safe analogy. It's not putting down anyone, but
Mhm.
it is really, really reinforcing your own personal taste, right? And your own personal expression, your own personal voice. And it would be the movie that you would like to watch, and crafting your life with that idea, that vision, is just a very, very powerful metaphor, I think.
Yes. Thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. No, it's really, really cool. I love it.
So you
Okay.
want to, yeah.
So quick two questions and then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
I know we went a little bit over, but it's okay. It's a good conversation. What do you do to stay aligned to your values? In other words, how do you keep your internal alignment frozen?
That's a good question. Internal alignment frozen. I think it's easy to freeze your internal alignment when you see the outcome of it. in terms of what you have created in your current reality, because it becomes the best gauge. Because when you see that, especially when in my case, like when I see a lot of people who are still in a very stagnant energy, with people, with places, with experiences, I actually feel like, my God, if they can just like like, I mean, if they have to be ready for that change, of course, but I just feel it, because partly I know that you don't have to be in that, because I have been in those places myself, right? So for me, like, because I have been there, done that, and I like the freedom that I've acquired now, that keeps me frozen in that state, because I already know that I'm not going to compromise this at any cost, because I've already seen that whatever I think is the cost is not really a cost. It's my um, perception.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Well, I think that that's a very powerful motivator too. Is that, you know, if you've had difficulties, if you've had rough spots, or if you've been in situations that were either out of your control or not aligned with who you are at your core, then you would do whatever you could to keep in your truth and in your reality and in your presence, you know. So very cool. Okay, last question. If there was a billboard that was visible to everyone on the world, so everyone would see it, and you could write a short message on the billboard, what would that message be?
That's a good question. I like it. That really condenses down, even smaller than the Reader Digest version. I would basically, if I have to say one sentence, is I actually say represent yourself. Like, I don't know if there's another word that I should use, because love yourself, a lot of time people don't recognize that that is true love means you represent yourself, because there's nobody else who's going to represent you. You are it. You were designed to represent you. So represent you, basically, actually, no, I would say shine your light. So shine your light to me is the same as representing you, because you have this light, this essence, this unique signature, and you need to broadcast that all over the world. So shine your light is going to be my one sentence.
That's
Bright.
amazing.
Shine
Yeah,
your light bright. Actually, yes, that covers
shine
it.
your light bright.
Yes.
No, that's yeah, that's really powerful. Just because so many people don't do it, you know. So many people acquiesce into expectations and into what I would call like psychic thinking, where they project this false reality of the future and expect things to happen that have no basis in actual reality. And so they choose not to express themselves fully and genuinely. And it's a shame to everyone, because how amazing would this world be if everyone's unique gifts and unique talents were available for everyone else to benefit from?
Exactly.
So thank you so much, Shanaz. I appreciate you and your light, and um, you're just an amazing individual, and I loved having you on. I will edit this thing. I'll actually stop recording. I think I could. Okay. Yeah, I did say bye. Okay. So stop recording.